Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I became a teacher here at Gabrielino in 2007, but prior to that, I was a civil engineer and I worked for a general contracting firm, so I was a construction manager. And the question I always get asked is, was that a tough decision or was that an easy decision? For me, it was a 55% pay cut to go from the private sector to become a teacher. So when people find that out, they're really curious. So here's my story as far as that decision. But before I get into that, I need to explain some of my background and some context of my life and where I've come from and how I developed. This is a picture of New York City, and I grew up in a neighborhood called Elmhurst, Queens. It's a little hard to see, but it's in red. Elmhurst, Queens, back in the 80s and 90s, was the most diverse zip code in the entire United States, which probably meant it was the most diverse zip code in the entire world. And I remember that. It was people from almost every continent, tons of languages in the schools, and an interesting place to grow up. Here's a picture of a street that I walked on a lot in the neighborhood. Now, New York is different from LA in that starting at the age of about 5th grade, 6th grade, you walk around the streets and go places on your own, and you take the subway, and that's common. You didn't get driven anywhere. So this is the street I grew up or hung out a lot on the top. And in the bottom is the park where I used to play basketball a lot during the summers, on weekends with my friends. Now, when you look at that, it looks like a semi-decent neighborhood, but in the 80s and 90s, it was a pretty dangerous place. It wasn't the greatest area. I grew up in a kind of a low-income family. All right, now we weren't starving, but we weren't swimming in cash. And so here's where I would hang out with my friends and play basketball. And starting from about 5th grade through 9th grade, I got mugged about 9 times total on those streets. All right, definition of mug is giving someone else something, usually a possession, involuntarily. Okay, just in case you're unsure. All right. It's not the most pleasant experience. It happened so often that what I would do, right, because you have to be smart, is that if I had money, if I had like $9, let's say, I would put maybe $8 in my shoe and $1 in my pocket. I would call that mug money. Okay? And the first time that it actually worked, I was thrilled, all right? So I got mugged, and I was like, oh, I only got $1, sorry. And I walked away, yes! I outsmarted the mugger. He only took $1 instead of my 9. Okay? So that was the environment I grew up in, and I always, it was hard, it's hard being relatively low income. I remember some stories, let me give you pictures. This was called quarter drink, all right? The reason why it was called quarter drink was that it was a quarter, right? And it's basically water, sugar, artificial flavoring, artificial coloring. And I remember always, me and my friends, we'd go play basketball hours on end, sometimes stickball, handball, and then we go to the store and we'd get quarter drink. But I remember in that store always looking at all the other choices. And I remember to this day looking and seeing the Tropicana juices, orange, strawberry, banana, orange, mango, whatever, mango orange. And I always wanted that juice, right? But it was $1. So instead, I was like, all right, we got to go with the quarter drink. And notice it's called quarter drink or orange drink, not orange juice, because it's not juice. But I remember that. I remember envying that and wanting that. I remember walking to school each day, right? I had to walk to the subway starting in 6th grade. And I would pass by this sushi restaurant that had a poster like this on the window. I remember looking at that and going, what is that? What is that? Is that, like, do you go in there and then that's how you choose your fish and then they cook it? Like, what are all these things? And like, why does it look raw? Right, because I didn't know. I never went to a restaurant, really, when I was your age. And I always remember thinking, I want that, or like, I wonder what that is. I remember this. I remember tickets. So in school, you know, I was a free lunch family. And the way when you were in school to determine whether to get your lunch was that you had to go give them a ticket. And I think pink was free lunch, I think blue was regular lunch, and then if you could afford to pay, you would just pay cash. So I remember dreading this because, for obvious reasons, because it was like shameful. It was like I had to go in my bag and then pick out the ticket, the bright pink ticket, and hand it in, then I could get my lunch. And I remember feeling like it's so icky. I remember in high school not wanting to go in a lunch line with anyone who knew me. Right? I just wanted to be, you know, I didn't want people to know, but you had to do that. And what was worse is that it was numbered and you had to find the exact number for the day. So sometimes there was like a little, like 10, 15-second drama and trying to find the correct free lunch ticket and handing it in. So I felt some shame in that. And I remember thinking, when I get older, you know, if I have a family, I don't want my son or daughter to have to go through that. I remember, I went to a high school. So that, you know, that was my elementary and middle school years. That's a picture of the high school I went to. It was a magnet high school that drew students from the entire New York City. And you had to take a test to get in. And so because of that, I started meeting people and classmates from all over New York City. Not only my little neighborhood that was high poverty, but people from high income areas, right? And so we used to work on projects, and you know, we'd have to do things together. And so I would start going to their houses and you know, having friends, and I would see something like this in their house. And I remember, right, I was a co-captain of a sports team, and I remember going to the other captain's house, and I got in there, and I was like, what is this? Right? I went into a room like this, and I was like, what does this room do? Right? Because it was just walls and sofas and a table. There was no TV. There was no anything else. And I was like, what is this? And it's called a family room. I was like, what do you do in a family room? What is that? And, you know, because in my house, I had 3 older siblings and my parents, but there were 6 of us. We had the all-purpose room. That was where, you know, we got our homework done, where we ate dinner, where we watched TV, where my sister would practice piano, where we were just hanging. It was all together. But then this house, I was just floored, and I was thinking, I want that when I grow older. Okay, and for me, like many of you, the message you hear is that education is the way out, right? Education is the way for you to do better in the future. So I did that. I did well in high school, applied to college, and then I went to Princeton University. Okay, so that's a picture of the campus, and you look at it, and it's like suburban, it's safe, right? I didn't know people didn't get mugged until my freshman year at Princeton. Okay, I just thought that was part of life. You know, my freshman year at the dining thing, when they heard that, like I became the center of attention for all the tables. Because like, what? You got mugged? Tell us more. And I didn't know that. It was a difficult time because of that income disparity. You know, we would talk about, oh, what'd you do last summer? And for some of my friends from college, it was like, oh, I flew to Paris, I went to see Australia, I get this sports camp, this experience. What did you do, Will? And then that's me. So for me, it was like, I went to the park, played basketball with my friends, and drank quarter drink. Because because that's all we did. We didn't do stuff. We didn't do camps. So you can see what's happening in my life. I'm comparing myself to others. I'm comparing myself to the world. I'm seeing what they have, and I'm becoming envious. I want that. So I'm working hard. I'm in college. I did all right. It was tough academically, but I was setting myself up to a trajectory where I basically wanted to be rich and have a lot of stuff. So, I majored in civil engineering. Then I, after college, worked in the general contracting industry, which is managing the construction of large skyscrapers and buildings. And those are some pictures. That's me in Jersey City, and then the picture on the right is at a project in downtown LA. It's a high school on the 101 freeway. I remember talking to my supervisor, who was about to retire, and he sent me down and just communicating and said, he was sharing about his career and how well he did. And he told me, and he looked at me and he said, "Will, I see a future for you in this company. Okay, if you stay with us and you stick it out, you will retire with millions of dollars, essentially, in your account. You'll become a shareholder, it'll treat you right here, stick with us, I'm about to retire, I'm set." So you would think, I've reached my goal, right? In my life, my trajectory was, I was gonna be rich, I was gonna take care of my family, I'm gonna have a lot of stuff. Here's my supervisor who saw how I was working for a year or two, sits me down and says, "You're gonna be in the higher echelons of the corporation." So I made it, you would think. The problem was that I was more miserable than ever before with how things were going. And why? I knew I was doing the wrong thing. And I was so incredibly miserable, but I was working so hard. Fortunately, I got married. My wife, who I love, got married, but I was totally miserable in my job. And finally, she told me, like just a couple months into our marriage, "We don't need this. You don't need this. Where are you headed? Be free of it." Okay? And so when she communicated that to me, there was this burden that got lifted, that just left, where I was like, yeah, I don't need this. Why do I need to do this? So it created a bunch of soul searching to the point where I realized, you know what, I always wanted to be a high school teacher. Always, but I was like kind of dissuaded by society to say, don't become a teacher. So a couple months into the marriage, I resigned from my job and started my path to become a teacher. And that's how I ended up here at Gabrielino in 2007. So I'm going to just share the years of students that I had. Okay. So, why was I able to do this, all right? Why was I able to take a 55% pay cut to become a teacher here? And was it hard or was it easy? And it was pretty easy once I was free of, I think, that burden. So some things I want to encourage you to think about is whatever you're pursuing defining you to the point that it's overtaking you, okay? So my goal wasn't necessarily bad. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have money to provide for my family. There's nothing wrong with that. But it got corrupted when it was the defining thing in my life, and that it overtook me. And let me use an analogy, okay? It's an adult analogy. I drink beer, okay? I drink alcohol sometimes, I do. A lot of adults do. But if alcohol defines who you are to the point where you cannot live without it, it corrupts you, okay? And that's what leads to alcoholism. For me, a noble goal, which was to provide for my family and have wealth, it's an okay goal, but it was corrupting me. It was corrupting my soul. It was corrupting my heart. When making decisions, ask yourself, what's motivating you? And is it building you up or is it tearing you down? Because the motivation for me was out of fear. It was like, I don't want to have what I had in childhood. I want better. But it was defining me to the point where it was tearing down who I was, my character, my integrity. And lastly, seek someone who will be able to speak wisdom in your life. All right? For me, it was my wife to be able to tell me and communicate to me and know me well enough and speak truth into my life to free me of that burden and what was going on. All right, so for all of you as high school students, seek that in your life. All right, some of you have that, and you're fortunate and you're blessed in that capacity. Some of you have people around you that maybe the messages aren't edifying to you. They're not building you up. They're tearing you down. And I think it's a process, okay? It's not perfect. I don't have a perfect life. I've still got issues, but I've got people around me and to help me through that. So once again, was it easy to take that career choice? It absolutely was, because it was so freeing. So thank you for listening to my story.